Very pleased to say. But again, a case that made the press, and this again would have been painful for this landlord, but it was a 6-bedroom HMO, and the tenant had become aware that the landlord had made a housing breach. The tenant was aware they could apply for a rent repayment order, so they did, and they were awarded 12 months rent rebate. So they received 12 months of their monthly rent back, so the landlord had to refund that. Of course, the one tenant had 5 other friends in the property and told each of the tenants, who then also made rent repayment order claims and was successful. So the landlord lost, in effect, the full HMO's income for a full 12-month period. And that was because it was an unlicensed HMO. So again, this is another thing that must be right at outset that has later consequences. So the fact this property was unlicensed and being operated when it shouldn't be cost the landlord a full year's income plus its operating costs. So rent repayment orders are out there. They aim to provide tenants with a mechanism for compensation when a landlord fails to meet their obligations. They apply in England, Wales and Northern Ireland, and any tenant can apply. Now, I have a number of grounds in front of me. These are the reasons that a tenant will be able to apply for a rent repayment order. There are more, but these are sort of the common ones, I think. As we've experienced with the example, operating an unlicensed HMO would be a reason why a tenant can apply. If a landlord breaches a banning order, I'll be honest, if a landlord breached a banning order, they're probably pretty naughty and they've probably breached everything. But that, for example, would be a reason a tenant can apply. Failure to comply with an improvement notice or a prohibition order. So if the council had raised an improvement notice and the landlord had then completely failed to honour that, at that point, that would be a potential trigger where the tenant could actually claim rent back. If the landlord rented out a property with serious hazards, which is a HHSRS definition, roughly speaking, they tend to be lack of heat and severe damp, insecure property. They're things that a tenant wouldn't and shouldn't really be living with. They're severe hazards. So if a tenant had lived in those conditions and could evidence it over a period of time, they would potentially have case for this rent repayment order. Ironically, failure to apply for a selective licence is a potential reason a tenant could be successful in gaining a rent repayment order. So again, it's all circling back these requirements. And the final one that's relatively common, unlawful eviction. So for example, if a landlord had evicted a tenant and not followed that Section 21 process we talked about, because I do still hear horror stories of landlords who've gone into properties, removed possessions and left them outside, which clearly would genuinely be an unlawful eviction. So in that case, not only would the landlord in effect have committed a crime, because it is, but the tenant actually could make a case for 12 months rent repayment order. This at the moment isn't particularly well known, but a bit like the housing benefits scam at the front, I guess wherever there's an opportunity for tenants or solicitors to make money, to attack landlords and to get money back, it will become common. There may well be legal practices who make this their business, to attack landlords and letting agents for rent repayment orders. So I guess it all just really enforces this message that work at the upfront of a tenancy before a tenancy is issued is absolutely critical. These things are in the marketplace now. They will become more common. So tenancies we're issuing now that run for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, if those files are incorrect, we're in problems with eviction, we're in problems with rent repayment orders. So I hope you're starting to see how it just all fits together. They do feel like or seem like unrelated issues, but actually the general sort of summary is the important stuff happens before a tenancy commences and the consequences come out later, basically. It's probably my summary of the evening. But a rent repayment order, just a few of the last sort of statistics on it, it must be made within 12 months of the breach happening, so they can't run on forever, but a tenant has 12 months. The tribunal would calculate the amount that's to be repaid, which is based on the rent that's been paid in the period. Landlords can be required to pay up to 12 months, and failure to comply with a rent repayment order can result in an additional fine and or criminal prosecution. I think if a landlord was flouting a rent repayment order, again, there's more problems going on there than meet the eye, frankly. But really, a lot of this is about prevention. We're very aware of the things that can happen or the consequences if we get it wrong, but it really is genuinely about prevention. And, these things are preventable if things are initiated properly. So I am pleased to say that brings to an end the legislation material.